These pictures on the screen are ones that were shot with the Hasselblad, but I've converted them to a TIFF through the Hasselblad Focus software, and in order for me to make small versions of the pictures to put up on my blog, which you can see here, the small JPEGs, it's usually quicker to do that through here. It's just a workflow that I've got into. The thing about workflow is it's very personal, so I don't expect everybody to use the same workflow as me, because we all have our different approach. So I'm going to pick up this picture here of this guy I shot on the station platform at Euractro the other day. We're going to open that up with Photoshop. Now, in the past, what I probably would have done before I had the use of film emulation plugins or the NIC Silver Effects Pro, which I use now, I would have made the picture a grayscale and then usually a duotone or a tritone picture to try and emulate what I used to get in the darkroom. So we'll just do that now, because I haven't actually done it this way for a while. So we make the picture a grayscale first, then go back into the mode menu, pick duotone. There are presets here. I'm going to pick one of the magenta ones, which has made it nice and pink. I'm going to now make it a tritone, and I'm going to add a custom tone myself. I'm going to pick one up from the kind of brown end of the spectrum. Okay, so that's fairly good. I mean, this is kind of looking a little bit like something I would have split-toned, selenium split-toned in the past. I'm going to pick slightly different magenta tone here and see if I can... Yeah, that's kind of... Okay, we'll start there. I mean, that's actually quite a nice tone. Let's just experiment, see if we can have a... Right, okay. Right, now this is getting kind of towards what the colours I might have experienced with split toning. With selenium, specifically in the darkroom. Okay, we'll try with that. Let's just change this one back to a kind of lighter pink. Interesting. Okay, so typically what I would have done in the old days, okay, so we'll call this pink 1, brown 1, mauve 1. Oops. Okay. What I would have done when I was doing it this way is I would then have converted the image back to RGB. Now I'm able to mess around with the colour, because what I've got here is not necessarily exactly what I want. It's quite close to what I would have got with selenium split toning in the darkroom. And really, I mean, the thing I'm pulling on the experience I'm pulling on when I'm processing is all the stuff I used to do with film in the darkroom, printing, colour or black and white. So these are looks I've got in my head. So this is kind of my old way of doing it, whereas now I tend to use plugins. But we'll just carry on doing it like this for a little bit. So, okay, let's go into colour balance. Start messing things around here a little. Okay, and this now is very much like the kind of colour that I would have got using something like Agfa. They had a paper called Record Rapid. It typically used to use like the grade 3, which is a kind of mid contrast, a little bit more contrasty than the middle grey. Record Rapid and the Kodak Selenium Toner. Typically, in the old days, you'd dilute that 1 part toner to 30 parts water, and the Record Rapid paper used to allow you to split tone it, so you could basically tone the shadows and leave the highlights alone, which are shadows and midtones, which is kind of what we're seeing here. This area over here is still white, so it's effectively, let's think of that as the paper and not the silver toner. So when you use the plugins, which we'll see in a little while, they talk about things like paper tone and silver tone. The white would be the paper, so this toner this process we're doing here is it's similar to what you would have got with the wet chemicals. It would have left the paper tone alone, and it would have toned the shadows. Actually, this is pretty close to what you would have got with a record rapid paper and Kodak's selenium toner. You've got these nice kind of deep, kind of mauve-ish shadow tones. The midtones are also toned nicely with the purple. So we can make that more, so we could actually tone the shadows a little bit more magenta. Go back to the midtones. This is nice. This is nice. So just see what happens when I don't really want to go over the top with the yellow, but a little bit of it is quite nice. It's not a sepia. It's kind of a magenta-y type sepia. Really, what I'm aiming to do here is not turn the shot too garish any colour. I mean, it's difficult to explain what I remember about black and white printing, because obviously that's in my head, and figuring out what was sympathetic tones, was largely down to getting experienced with a set of chemical processes and then knowing when to pull the paper out of the liquid. And you got used to how the paper would respond to the chemicals. It's very different with digital post-processing, because there's no real way to know where to start. In the darkroom, you started with a specific kind of chemical because you knew roughly what it would do, and then you experimented to get a look that you liked. With digital post-processing, there are so many choices. It's difficult to know exactly where to start. Now, this grayscale, duotone, tritone, quadtone approach is one that gets some nice results, and it's very customizable. But you've got to know where to start. The thing with plugins, which we'll have a look at in a second, is that they kind of give you a starting point. So we've manipulated the colour here a little bit. What I'm going to do now, this may seem odd because it's not a raw file, but I'm going to open the camera raw filter, because even on a TIFF, that allows me to manipulate shadows and highlights and leave other parts of the image alone. So what I'm going to do here is just pull up the shadows a little bit, because I've lost some of the detail in this guy's face and I want to get it back. Okay, so we've pulled that up. If I click this on and off, you can see what that's doing. It's a bit too much. Okay, so we could experiment with making the blacks blacker and then pull up the shadows a little bit, so we're still not... That's quite nice. Okay, let's just switch that on and off, and now we can see it's just lightened up some of the darker areas of the print a little bit. Could obviously pull up the global exposure of it, so let's do that. Let's peel this shadow recovery back, and then let's just switch it on and off so we can see. That's actually probably nicer. I don't want to pull up shadows too much. It's better to pull up the global exposure in with this image a little bit more. Now I'm just going to have a look and see what this would make it cooler. Go warmer. Now we're sort of drifting into a sepia. But this is quite a nice tone here, so we've just changed the tone ever so slightly. Okay, let's stick with that. The camera raw filter is something I use on TIFFs quite a lot. If you've got a good raw file, then you make it into a TIFF, but then sometimes you just want to pick up some of the tones in the shadow or bring back the highlights, and you can still do that with a TIFF using the camera raw filter. So I actually like this tone. Yeah, pretty happy with that. Save it as. I usually give all my files a suffix, so we'll start with A on this one because it's kind of the first variant of the original. Okay, so what I'm going to do is go back to here and open up the original again, and we'll try it through one of the plugins. So I have a couple of plugins I use for black and white. So the Silver Effects Pro is pretty good. There's some nice things in there. Recently I picked up a copy of the Topaz black and white effects, so we'll try that one first. It was cheap, and actually I kind of liked some of the effects when I saw them in a tutorial that somebody'd made online, and thought I'd give it a go. And with most of these things, I'm typically not ever using only one plugin to do anything. It's a bit like cooking, so I add a little bit of one thing and then a little bit of another. So the last time I used this, I was kind of doing something platinum printing, which in the old days would have meant using platinum light sensitized salts instead of silver. Very expensive, but there's some quite nice color effects in here. So we'll go into the, where we got, there is a split toning. Let's go into this toned collection. Okay, here we go. So we've got sepia and gold and things going on down here, so we'll just see what we can get that's similar. So here's a selenium. So this is kind of sepia and selenium. So I think this selenium one here is kind of drifting towards what we were getting with the Duotone. It's quite nice. It's been a while since I've used this, so okay. Let's see what we've got here. Okay, strength of local adjustment. So, so there's not an awful lot of you can do to vary the tone. Okay, selenium, gold, blue. Okay, here we are. So we can up the strength of the tone, the balance. So this is what I was talking about earlier, the silver hue and paper hue. So the silver hue is kind of the darker parts of it. Can't actually see anything changing here, which is interesting. Oh, okay, now we've got, so this, the paper hue is affecting the lighter parts of the picture. So now we're getting somewhere now towards the tone of what we were doing with the duotone process. This is quite nice. I mean, this is fairly like, okay, let's just save that and we can compare it to the one we did using the duotone method in Photoshop. It's going to take its time. It's sometimes quite slow. Okay, so that's that one. Let's go back to the one we did with the duotone. Yeah, a completely different kind of thing. This is obviously, it's a brighter, lighter picture. The other one is there's more emphasis on the shadows. It feels softer, whereas this one feels harder. I quite like both of them. I mean, they've each got their charm. What I sometimes do, well, because I like both of them and I can't quite make up my mind, what I'll actually do, I'm going to hold down the shift key on the computer and then drag this second one we've made on top of the first one, and then I'm just going to, okay, so that's 0. So now we're seeing the one that we did with the duotone, and then the one I've put on top is the one we just did with Topaz, and I'm going to blend them into each other until we get something like that. So the original one with the duotone is here, and we've got this one, and let's just click back. So the one we've just done with the plugin is quite bright. I think it's too bright, frankly. Kind of like the shadowy feel of the other one. So now what we've got here is kind of 50% of each, which is quite nice. And what I'm going to do is save that as version B. That's fine. I'll keep the layers for now. In fact, we'll compress those layers. So we've got version B, and this one we made with the plugin I'm going to save as C, so that we can look at all of them. Okay, let's just go back here. Okay, that's our original. I'm going to open B. Okay, and let's open the original colour one as well. Okay, oops, different image. 4155. There we go. Okay, so this is our colour. This was the one we made using the Duotone process. This is the one we made using the Topaz black and white effects plugin, which I thought was a bit too bright. And this one is the one that we made by blending together the two toned ones that we'd made, and we've got kind of almost 50% of the plugin, and we've got 50% of this one, and we've now got this one, which I think is a good mix, and it comes across as very much like a selenium split-toned print that I would have made in the darkroom. Okay, that's it for now. We'll do something with this plugin next time, Silver Effects Pro, but yeah, I hope you've enjoyed that. Haven't worked on that image at all before. That's the first time I've done it. I like the colour one. The Hasselblad CFV16 back comes up with this very kind of green cast on pictures, which is quite nice. And actually, before we go, let's just experiment here with what I'm going to do is drag this one on top of the colour one. Yeah, okay, that's fine. It's telling me there's a conflict, and I'm going to fade this black and white layer back. And now we've got... Sometimes I'll do this because the original colour and the black and white, you can make something that would be similar to what we would have done when we were processing E6 transparencies back in the day. So something you may see in your plugins these days is a process called bleach-bypass. So what that actually meant in the old days was that there was a process, one of the chemical baths in the process of making transparencies would be a bleach, and it would basically bleach away the kind of black and white silver type chemicals in the transparency, and then allow you to see the full colour. So by bypassing the bleach, you left some of the black and white silvers in the image, so you've got this kind of mixed black and white colour image, which is kind of what we've got here. If we peel this back to 0, there's the colour, and we're effectively bleeding out some of the colour, so it's actually quite a good way of removing the colour cast, but we're increasing some of the shadow, the kind of impact of the shadow areas of the image by having this black and white image on top. I quite like that. So the original colour one, now we've got rid of quite a lot of the colour cast, and it's increased the kind of drama and controlled the luminosity and increased some of the kind of textural contrast in the picture. So actually I'm going to collapse those layers, and we'll save this as a final D version. So now we should have open all our originals again. Here's our colour. When it decides to open. Where is it? Okay, let's try that again. Okay, here we go. So there's our original colour image, which has got the green cast, which, you know, is quite nice, but we've then made a duotone, actually a quadtone, using the Photoshop's image mode, convert to grayscale, and then gives you the options of convert it to a duotone or tritone or quadtone, which I thought was a little dark. Then we've made a version using the Topaz black and white effects plugin, which is a little bit too bright, but still looks quite nice, but has some nice tones going on in it. We then merged those two together to give us this one, and finally pulled this one on top of the colour version and faded it back to get this one, which is nice actually. I like the colour tones in this. The original still has its charm, but now I've seen this one, I much prefer this one. So there you have it. Yeah, thanks for watching. Be back with some more post-pro tips very soon. Cheers.